We've seen a lot of, movies and documentaries and stuff about, big pharma, right? And we've seen like the bad, but, capitalism is a real motherfucker, I guess you could say. But they also have created a lot of great things. Like we have a lot of great drugs. We have a lot of great advantages. And here in this country, we probably make more drugs. I guess we consume more drugs. That's for sure than any other country in the world. But we have a tendency, because of some of those movies that painted them in a bad light, we then think that pharmaceutical interventions, like they're bad. You kind of put those over here, they're bad. And we even heard, that some of the cholesterol medications and stuff like that got some heat and people have gone back and forth. And then there's people like Peter Attia who are like, well, sometimes these drugs can be appropriate for a particular people. So I think sometimes the message is a little confusing. I think it's easy to hate the companies that are big. It's easy to hate the companies that are making a lot of money. But they do provide us with a lot of conveniences, and maybe a lot of these drugs wouldn't even really ever happen if those companies weren't able to have the wealth that they have to be able to put the amount of commercials on TV that they do. And I realize that they're doing nefarious things as well, and we can get into that in a minute. But it's just really interesting because it's almost like the sugar diet thing I'm doing. It's like, holy shit, maybe the way out is like the shit that we thought was bad. And in this case, there's a lot of drugs out there that can be appropriate to really help us live longer lives and not even just live longer, but just have more oomph in our later years.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a place for traditional drug manufacturers, and they have, and they continue to do a lot of good. There are situations though, where drug companies go out and do things that are not in a patient's best interests, like pricing something so high that only 12% of the US population can get access to it, because that's the demographic that has enough people that will be able to give them enough profit at a certain price point. That's the equation. And I think that's one thing that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't get right. Instead of pricing for patient access, for volume, they price for profit. And that's where companies, like Empower come in, where a patient that can't get access to a medication or a therapy because it's either been discontinued, back ordered, or it's unobtainable through their insurance because their insurance can't afford to pay for it, it's not in the formulary. There are other avenues. And if a doctor, prescriber determines that that patient can be better served by a personalized version of a medication, then they can send those prescriptions to a compounding pharmacy to get filled. And another thing that I think is not doing well in the pharmaceutical industry is the lack of competition. And the way that the rules are put in place to allow pharma, big pharma, to be able to stifle competition, extend their patents, create new drugs that are just a little bit different than the previous drug, the same active ingredient, they just change the strength a little bit, and now the patent's extended so they can continue to make it a brand name drug and sell it, make billions of dollars, even though the drug's not really that much more beneficial than the previous drug that they were selling. Like, these are things that aren't serving patients. They're serving the shareholders of those pharmaceutical companies, but at the expense of us. So that's really what I think I wish they would do better. But they have a devious system in place where they lobby more than any other industry in the world.
What does that mean?
So lobbying is where you go out and you send lobbyists to talk to members of Congress, senators, regulators, legislators, and convince them that they should vote this way for this bill or this policy because it's better for society. Right. Where in fact, it's beneficial for them at the expense of society. And you say, well, I mean, legislators, regulators, they're not stupid. Like they can see through as well. When you have 3 full-time lobbyists for every single member of Congress, that's all they hear. And us as an industry, the compounding industry.
I will never go to a doctor ever again about my general health. All they want to do is put you on pills.
Really well said there by Dana White. Couldn't agree with him more. A lot of us are just trying to get jacked and tan. A lot of us just want to look good, feel good, And a lot of the symptoms that we might acquire as we get older, some of the things that we might have, high cholesterol or these various things, it's amazing to have somebody looking at your blood work as you're going through the process, as you're trying to become a better athlete, somebody that knows what they're doing. They can look at your cholesterol. They can look at the various markers that you have, and they can kind of see where you're at, and they can help guide you through that.
And there's a few aspects too, where it's like, yes, I mean, no shade to doctors, but a lot of times they do want to just stick you on medication. A lot of times there is supplementation that can help with this. At Merrick Health, these patient care coordinators are going to also look at the way you're living your lifestyle, because there's a lot of things you might be doing that if you just adjust that, boom, you could be at the right levels, including working with your testosterone.
And there's so many people that I know that are looking for, they're like, hey, should I do that? They're very curious. And they think that testosterone is going to all of a sudden kind of turn them into the Hulk. But that's not really what happens. It can be something that can be really great for your health, because you can just basically live your life a little stronger, just like you were maybe in your 20s and 30s.
And this is the last thing to keep in mind, guys. When you get your blood work done at a hospital, they're just looking at like these minimum levels. At Merrick Health, they try to bring you up to ideal levels for everything you're working with. Whereas if you go into a hospital and you have 300 nanograms per deciliter of test, you're good, bro, even though you're probably feeling like shit. At Merrick Health, they're going to try to figure out what things you can do in terms of your lifestyle. And if you're a candidate, potentially TRT. So these are things to pay attention to get you to your best self.
And what I love about it is a little bit of the back and forth that you get with the patient care coordinator. They're dissecting your blood work. It's not like you just get this email back and it's just like, hey, try these 5 things. Somebody's actually on the phone with you, going over every step and what you should do. Sometimes it's supplementation, sometimes it's TRT, and sometimes it's simply just some lifestyle habit changes.
All right, guys, if you want to get your blood work checked and also get professional help from people who are going to be able to get you towards your best levels, head to merrickhealth.com and use code PowerProject for 10% off any panel of your choice.
We have one lobbyist, like for everybody. We have 1/400th the budget that Big Pharma has. And so they hear 1/400th about actual patients' needs, what's actually going on. And so they vote overwhelmingly in favor of Big Pharma's rules. And Big Pharma also, over the years, has created quite a network. I mean, $380 million of lobbying buys you something, and it buys a lot of influence. And so what we see now going on is Big Pharma is using that influence and partnering with law firms like Faegre Drinker and utilizing a specific lawyer, Libby Bainey. And Novo and Eli are partnering with Libby Bainey to go off and misinform boards of pharmacy, because what they try to do it federally. They tried to go to the FDA and convince the FDA that compounding pharmacies are dangerous. We shouldn't be allowed to make medicine. We're putting patients at risk. Where in fact, the opposite is true. There are more adverse events done from commercial medications for these GLP-1s than compounded ones. And they failed because this administration is not stupid. They don't believe Big Pharma, that Big Pharma is doing what's in the best interest of patients. And so because they tried lobbying the FDA, didn't work. And now that they realize that's not going to work with this administration, now they're going to the states. And they're convincing individual state boards of pharmacy that compounding pharmacies are dangerous and shouldn't be allowed to operate and shouldn't be allowed to make GLP-1s. And this is dangerous, because at the end of the day, every single state that they convince, we've got overnight millions of patients losing access within those states to these life-changing medications. And so that's the thing I don't like about Big Pharma. These webs of influence that they create. And at the end of the day, this is regulatory capture in action, where you're able to partner with, convince, and eventually offer a job to many of these regulators and legislators, that they'll come work for them after, as long as they vote for them.
And there's a lot of ways to convince people, and especially if you're communicating with doctors and stuff like that too, because, how would you convince a doctor? Well, let's run a study. They got so much money to run studies and to You know, and the way the doctors are educated, you know, you saw the movie with Michael Keaton. I can't quite remember the name of it. Chris, do you remember the name of that movie where I can't remember the name of it. He was like hooked on drugs, and anyway, it was a thing about big pharma. But a lot of the doctors are just learning from somebody that's selling these pharmaceuticals, a pharmaceutical rep who just learned about it at some conference, and they're going out and they're, you know, infiltrating and communicating with the doctors that this drug is better than the last one, and all those different kind of things. I think maybe Ryan brought it up. What's it called? Is it called Dope Sick? Oh, your microphone doesn't work. Dope Sick. There you go. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but
another one called Painkiller that was on Netflix.
Painkiller and Dope Sick. Yeah, I mean, they do a good job of like depicting what's going on. And so these companies, they'll do anything to get these drugs moving. And I'm not saying that the drugs are bad. I'm just saying that it kind of sucks that the doctor that you might go to, you might go to a doctor today, and they might have just got informed about something, you know, just a couple weeks ago. And now they're prescribing it to you, and they are taking the word of the pharmaceutical company, and they hopefully they reviewed some sort of evidence, or they communicated at least with some other doctors, but they don't really know how effective or how efficient some of this stuff's going to be.
Right. I mean, big pharma is infamous for paying off doctors, paying them $5,000 to do a talk, sending them off to Hawaii to play golf. And, you know, they were about to put in rules that were preventing pharma from doing this, but pharma lobbied so well and so hard that they convinced Congress to let them self-regulate. And this is they're like, we promise we'll never do this again. They keep breaking the rules. But that's the thing. That's what lobbying buys you. It buys you influence. And to this very day, pharma, you know, while they're not supposed to talk about off-label uses or pay doctors directly, there's still other ways that they use to be able to get funds into those doctors, like doing studies or doing other types of talks. And so, yeah, that's not a good system. You know, and what we see in the compounding industry is prescribers that are teaching each other. They're working with academics. They're seeing all the studies that are coming out, and they're figuring out together what's in the best interest of the patient, not what a pharmaceutical rep believes is in the best interest of their patients.